Gas is going. You are listening to PHP Ugly, episode 111. I'm Eric Van Johnson. Here with me this lovely night is my always energetic and spunky co-host, John Congdon.
Hello.
And the
Spunky.
master
He said
of
spunky.
doom and gloom, the guy who lurks in the dark, the person you try to keep your children away from, Tom Rideout.
Hey.
Good intros there.
I don't know why I put so much effort into the intro where all I get in response is, hey.
Well, I mean, right before that, you did tell people to keep their children away from me, which is...
You know, we have to have a heart-to-heart discussion here tonight, I'm afraid. We started to have the discussion off air, but seeing the subject matter of the discussion, I felt it all the appropriate to have on air. Thomas Rideout broke a golden rule of podcasting.
All right, the editor-in-chief of PHP Ugly.
What did I
Just to be
do?
clear.
I don't think I'd call him the chief of PHP Ugly.
By the way, your microphone sounds off. Just saying.
What did I do?
That's
It
better.
still sounds off. No, it still sounds off. Is it? Are you talking through your microphone?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
When he moved it, it sounded better. He sounded like he was in a tin can before that.
What did I do wrong?
You took content that was not in the show that we recorded, I think it was before the show began, and you put it in the show.
It was directly after we hit record. My fault. We were recording. I should know better, but I wasn't expecting it to be taken that way.
Thomas did call it out the next week. He said, "Did you like the intro?" I'm like, I thought it was kind of funny, sure, but I realized that actually that wasn't part of the actual show. So yeah, that seemed inappropriate. And then I found out you hurt John's feelings.
I'm sorry, John.
It was fine. I was just like, I thought the intro is always something from the show taken out of context, so that when you listen to the show, it's then in context and it's funny that way.
Nope.
Yep.
Nope. This one case, people will never know why John was actually masturbating.
Well, I mean, I think the why is self-explanatory. It wasn't to solve a complex problem.
Oh my God.
No, I dug through the whole show.
Now that's part of the show, so that's gonna be taken out now. Put at the beginning again.
No.
Why was John masturbating? Today we explore the many reasons why John masturbates.
You're gonna have to say something funnier later on in the show, then.
Not gonna happen.
You know, we just set that bar a little higher.
That's what we do. We set bars high.
Oh my goodness. Can we move on to something more fun?
I don't know.
I have a question.
Masturbating was pretty fun.
I do have a question outside of that.
Right.
So this past weekend was Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Even though it's gonna be out like 2 weeks after Father's Day. The way our release cycle kind of works.
Yeah.
I participated in a poker tournament. It was 8 guys, all dads, right, that were there. And before the tournament started, we agreed we're going to pay out 3 places, $40, $80, and then the winner takes the rest. Wouldn't you know, we get down to the end, I win the tournament, and the person who comes in second counts out the money, and there's 320 left. And he goes, 200, 120? And I don't know the guy well enough, so I don't call him out and say, like, no, you're only supposed to get 80. Oh, no, it was 200, 140, because I gave away $60.
For any IRS agents listening today, make sure you write all those numbers down correctly.
Please do. I don't want to pay taxes on $60 I didn't get. Did I do the right thing? I mean, it's $60. It's not a large sum of money, but should I have said no? We all agreed you only get 80.
Again, I think we're touching on the topic of dude rules, and that would be a dude rule.
Okay, well, no, it's called bro code.
Okay, bro code. Or I'm sure there's some more politically non-gender related code version of that, but yes, I agree. I mean, plots were decided. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
There were a couple of weird scenarios. I think he was late, so he may not have heard the initial discussion of it. But at the end, we definitely said it again. But of course, he may not have heard it. I don't know. So later on, the host, the guy I know, comes up and he's like, "Oh, congratulations!" And he was talking to me about it, and he's like, "So how much did you get?" I was like, "Well, that's a funny story." I kind of tell him what had happened, and somebody else that had witnessed it was standing right there and concurred with what I said. And he's like, "Do you want me to say something?" Meanwhile, this guy's been drinking all day, so I know he's drunk. And I'm like, "No, I don't want to cause a scene. It's not that big of a deal. It's just funny." So he's like, "All right, then I'm not going to say anything." I'm like, "Okay, fine."
Were you wearing your jacket at the time, John, that says "I really don't care"? Do you?
I wear that on my face all the time. I really don't care. So, all right. 10 minutes later, me and the family were leaving, and he comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, just so you know, I said something." I went up and I said, "Oh, how'd you do?" And the guy said, I came in second. He goes, "Oh, so you got $80?" The host says to him, he goes, "Oh, no, we split it differently." He said something, but didn't follow it up. He could have.
Yeah, I think
he's like, "Oh, no, you're supposed to get 80.
What you're describing is just anxiety for me. It's like one of the reasons I don't get into the poker stuff in the first place.
Oh.
Where it's if someone is like, "Hey, these are the rules," I'm just like, "Yeah, great."
It's like, I know you won, Thomas, but I'm just going to take your pot. We're okay with that, right?
Yeah, it's like high school all over again.
All right, let's get into some more PHP stuff then.
Well, you mentioned getting taxed on $60 that you didn't make, which leads us into
doom and gloom already.
No, this is just interesting.
Okay.
Is that the Supreme Court did side with, I believe, Wisconsin on internet sales being required to collect state taxes. So don't be surprised if stuff that you didn't pay taxes on before online all of a sudden starts getting taxes added to it.
It's funny you say that. I think my Amazon started getting taxed. My Amazon orders started getting taxed. I don't remember that happening before.
That's been going on for a while, though. They started once they put warehouses in California, they were charging tax on it.
Yeah, that was all physical location based. Now it's no longer physical location based. It's just sales in America have to collect taxes.
Yeah, it shocked me that it hasn't happened before this. I mean, New York, I think, was trying to do it, 7-8 years ago, where they were saying you sell something to people living in New York, you have to pay sales tax on those items.
I think the strong separation between state and federal governments is what allowed people to just say, "No, I don't think so," because there was no repercussion that could be put in place. But yeah, it has always been weird to me that the stuff was tax-free for so long. We're looking at almost 20 years since I first bought something online.
Well, wait for your back tax bill.
The one thing that was stated in this ruling was that back taxes did not count, that you would not have to pay back taxes.
Yeah, that makes sense. How are they going to really enforce that?
Yeah, and another interesting thing is most people don't know this, but you're supposed to declare out-of-state purchases on your tax forms and pay for taxes when you pay the IRS.
Supposed to. Nobody ever does, though.
Yeah, no, I've never met anybody who actually does that. And when I did have a professional tax preparer, they did not even bother asking me if I'd bought anything online.
Nah, of course not. So I got a fun story if you guys want to listen to it. It is PHP related.
Absolutely.
As everyone probably knows, the project I mainly work on, when I first started on it, was PHP 4. And this was just, 5 or 6 years ago? And we got them up to PHP 5, eventually 5.6, and made a monumental leap this past week, actually last night, of moving from MySQL functions to MySQLi.
Oh, nice. You finally got that done.
Finally got it done. We released that code, it was probably a few months ago, and while it worked, it stopped working, or it caused problems in our workers. And I think it was because of using this really old data objects package. It was actually making two connections to the database, one for db.php and one for this data objects package. Huge pain in the ass. Figured that out. Released the code last night, and I still had issues. There's something I missed. But luckily, we fought through it and didn't have to revert the code, which was nice. So getting one step closer to getting the PHP 7 there. Super excited.
Now, 7.3 just hit Alpha 2.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I think I've tested the code base after this PR that was merged last night. I've tested on 7.2 and it was working, seemed to be working fine. Again, we really don't know until we get it deployed and everyone hitting every single page. Because I think we're at like 30% test coverage right now. Still so much to do. I got another funny story. Ready for this one?
Another funny story? Are you implying you've already told one funny story?
No, I meant I have another story. I'm just gonna keep rambling because you guys aren't stopping me.
That's Eric's bit.
Yeah, I love New Relic. Eric loves New Relic too. He's just not saying it right now.
I just can't afford it.
Yeah, so we're using it on this project, and there's been this one page that has been the bane of my existence now for a month, if not more, showing as being one of the worst performing pages on the site. Always taken over a second to render. And I can't tell you, I think I've opened 3 or 4 pull requests trying to refactor this piece of code because it does so many SQL queries. Finally dig down deep enough to find out there was a sleep 1 in the code. Why is this taking over a second? Oh, because we're sleeping for a second somewhere in it.
Oh man,
I'm under attack. I'm under attack.
Kitty.
Ugh, my goodness.
So I talk about my cats. You guys just roll your eyes.
Yeah, your cat's not that cute. Look at it.
Look at this thing.
So yeah, don't put sleep 1 in your code. It makes for a terrible web experience.
Don't step on my keyboard. Don't step on my keyboard. Go ahead. It's part of my new code workflow. I'm just getting a bunch of kittens and it's going to make them walk on the keyboard and see if they developing anything good.
Has anyone noticed that Eric's code has really improved in the last couple of weeks?
It's perfect.
Oh, God.
Wow.
Oh my God. It's just bye, kitty.
That's a really nice pint glass you have there.
That's my SDPHP featured mug by the Diego Dev sponsor group. You can't be in here and making a bunch of noise. I'm trying to create art.
Or bring the art completely to a stop. Either way. Oh man.
All right. So since we were talking about Wave PHP, what speakers are you guys looking forward to hearing? We have it. I swear to God, you're driving me nuts, mister. All right. What speakers are you looking forward to?
Marcus Moore.
Marcus Moore.
Why are there speakers there?
I was actually very excited to be the coming out party for TJ Miller. I thought we were going to be his first official conference that he speaks at. Turns out we're not. He's speaking at Laracon earlier. What is that? This month? Is it July or June?
No.
Anyways, he's speaking at Laracon, so we're not going to be his first. But yes, we will be Marcus Moore's first. I am actually very excited about Marcus Moore. I've put a lot of pressure on him to get a particular project done for his talk. So I hope I don't break the poor fella. He's a nice guy, but I've been noticing his temper's been getting shorter and shorter lately. So I think I might
stop pushing me.
Yeah, and when he says pushing, he means physically pushing him.
Yeah. Tim Lytle, he is a great speaker too. So he's doing a training session, and congrats to him today. As of the day we're recording this, he has a brand new baby girl.
Oh,
born today. Yeah,
that's a new babies. Ben Edmonds, I'm looking forward to seeing him talk. I've been following him for some time now, so I'm really looking forward to actually seeing him talk in person. We got some good speakers, man. I mean, just
Beth Tucker
literally
Long.
A to T. Adam Cole, TJ Miller. Everybody.
We have a San Diego native. Oh, native. I don't know if he is native, but he lives here in San Diego. Jesse Decker. He's spoken at SDPHP a few times. Excellent presenter. Yeah, love watching his talks.
Yeah. I just saw Jessica speak at Longhorn, so I'm really excited to have her talking. Yeah, man.
We have a lot of great speakers. So you need to get your tickets now.
Are you guys hearing this, Kat?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
You're driving me nuts. You're so inconsiderate. You're so inconsiderate, kitty. You're not supposed to be in here.
Says a person talking to the cat.
Now here's a question for
breaking the flow.
Your mic's messed up again.
Here's a question for you. Why is the early bird stuff still there?
It's a good question, John.
Because it's still early,
John. When are we?
We're just under 90 days.
What? We are 3 months.
89 days out.
That's what I said. 3 months. We've expanded our cast to Smokes.
Hey, look, it does.
And now he's literally on the microphone now.
Did you just say Smokes?
This is God. Don't put your face in my mouth. I'm sorry, guys.
What's the cat's name?
Smokes.
Actually, he's Smokey, and his sister's Bandit. So they're Smokey and the Bandit.
That was my cat's name, Smokey.
Oh yeah,
I missed that cat.
Yeah, so this one's Smoke and his sister, who's probably be joining us here shortly. They're usually not too far apart from each other for too long. Yeah,
this is great conversation. But
for my favorite
thing about my cat Smokey was I could play fetch with him.
Fetch?
He'd jump up in our bed in the morning and we'd throw balls out and he'd go fetch it and bring it back to us. It was awesome. Way better than any dog I had.
You hear that? You need to learn a trick, and that's not interrupting my podcast.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So anyway, it looks like on the website we have the early bird ending July 31st,
which I think is completely inappropriate. We're only in June, right?
Yeah, I'm on board. That seems crazy.
Well, you better get them before Eric makes me change it. How about that?
When are we releasing the schedule?
I don't know. I thought you had it ready. When is it going live?
You tell me to push it live. I got the
branch
ready to go. Do it now!
I think we're missing one person's headshot, right?
We're missing two people's headshots, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Amanda Folson, if you're listening, been tweeting at you. You haven't sent me your headshot yet. And then we got Marcus. We're waiting on Mark's updated headshot.
Not Marcus. Mark.
Mark, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a new RFC out for PHP that I really like.
Oh yeah, what is that?
Typed Properties 2.0. You know how when you set a private variable in a class, you have to create getters and setters for it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this sort of goes the Visual Basic route and auto-generates getters and setters for any declared variables in your class.
But what if you don't want them to be gotten or set?
Then you would have to set them as private.
I thought that's what you just said. If they were...
Or, I'm sorry, protected.
Private. So with protected, they will not have getters and setters, but private will?
I believe so.
I guess I really need to look at this RFC because you're not making any sense, Mr. Thomas. What RFC is it?
Typed Properties V2. RFC.
Get a ticket for it? I don't see a ticket. Oh, crap. And here comes... See, I told you. She's never too far from her brother.
It is literally just RFC Typed Properties V2.
Yeah.
There's no number to it. Google it, you'll find it.
So I really like this. This reminds me of my days in Visual Basic.
What is that?
Visual Basic did the same kind of thing where if you declared a variable, it would generate the setters and getters for you. I find it nice. It helps clean things up and keep things, consistent.
I got a question for you guys. John knows we kind of had this conversation, but do you still see validity in using constants, especially when you're using like a framework?
I use lots of constants.
Man, that just seems so old school to me. And I told the developer who was working on it, I'm like, I honestly don't have a better solution, but it just seems so antiquated for some reason. I don't know why in my head I have a problem with it. I mean, even looking at it, the code even looks ugly. It's like
I agree with you, but when it comes to integers for your type IDs, if you don't have it set to enum in your database, it is super handy to have.
Which you shouldn't.
Throughout the code.
Enums are bad.
And then when you're using the same string multiple times, it prevents you from coding the wrong string. If you're using an IDE, it's going to autocomplete your constant. You're not going to screw up that string.
Yeah, it's a valid point. I agree.
I use it for my model statuses and things like that.
That's exactly actually one of the things we're looking to use it for was a status on a model.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It looks like poor coding. Like now when I look at it, the framework looks so. When we code in Laravel, this is a Laravel app, the code looks so clean, so eloquent, and then you have these constants at the top of a model. It's like, oh, what is that? Looks horrible.
But it makes the rest of the code outside of that so much nicer to read.
Yeah.
I know what I'm putting there. And especially when you're dealing with integers, strings might be a different story, but how many times have you mistyped a string or you've like fat fingered it?
Yeah.
You won't do that with a constant.
Thomas, you said enums are evil. I have a reason I don't like enums. Why do you say enums are evil?
Because they require modification of the table structure to add a new value.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Which is pointless and dumb.
Well, it's not pointless. If you need a new value, there's a point to it. But yes, it's risky, and yeah, I have steered away from using enums in my in my code. Something else I've gotten kind of, well, let me complete this thought and then I'll move to another thought. Something else
take forever.
I've gotten very sloppy at doing, and then I find myself questioning the validity of it. We may have touched on this in the previous show, but I keep coming back to foreign key restraints and whether or not it actually buys you anything. Well, I guess it it definitely buys you something. It puts the burden of that data integrity on the database, which I get that, but I don't know. I have been lazy at defining foreign key restraints in my database architecture, and I can't say that I've missed it, but I can't say that I've hit an application big enough where it's bit me in the ass yet either.
It's super convenient for me when I'm going through a database, especially through something like SQL Pro, where because of the referential integrity, you can click on an ID and it takes you straight to that table on the specific
nice.
row.
Yeah.
And the cascading deletes. I know that the big thing with Laravel is soft deletes and you don't really get the data out of there, but cascading deletes when you don't have it is such a pain in the ass, especially when you have lots of tables. Making sure your entire database gets cleaned up by deleting one row is really nice to have.
All right, let's talk about that for a quick second.
Again, though, I think in a company where you have a person whose position is DBA, then it's a different story because you don't want the developers to be able to screw up your database. So there's an accountability thing that goes into that as well.
So you're saying foreign key restraints would be more common in an organization that has a dedicated DBA.
In my code base, I don't have a DBA, so I can mess up the code. I can mess up my values. I can really screw things up. In a code base where you have a DBA, their job is to make sure that an exception is thrown if you try to mess something up. And your job as a programmer becomes to catch those exceptions instead of to catch exceptions earlier on when you would normally do your data validation. So I see a lot of this database technology goes back to really older tech where people worked in teams of 50 and 60 and they had a DBA and a junior DBA, and you couldn't just add a column by creating a migration. You weren't allowed to touch the database. Everything had to go through.
What's your personal opinion on it then?
I think
just in general practice for what you do.
I think that the way that we work as PHP developers, we have to go fast. And doing things the way we do them makes development faster. Managing your foreign keys, that requires a different set of tools. It requires a different mindset. And it's something that I see slows us down when we try to do it.
No, but why is this slowing you down? If as you're creating the table, you know that you're storing a user ID in this table and you just put in a foreign key to the user table. Well, how is that slowing you down?
You don't necessarily have the same amount of time to think everything all the way through. I mean, in a simple example like that, yeah. But in more complex examples where features like stored procedures are being used and things like that, or when cascading deletes, the DBA has all the time in the world to figure out if something is the correct way of doing it or not.
Yeah.
Whereas we do it in between coding.
So you're saying as general practice, maybe you don't use foreign key restraints that often?
No, I don't use them at all.
You don't use them at all? Wow, I'm surprised to hear that.
I have in the past.
All the time.
And John uses them all the time. Interesting. So let's talk about cascading deletes, since that was brought up, because that's another topic that's come up recently on the project we're working on. I made the decision to implement soft deletes on models because although a user may delete something, there may be a requirement for the company that this platform is being built for to still have access to that data. So we're kind of implementing soft deletes. And again, this is another practice that I've kind of gotten into where I'm sort of a data hoarder. It's like I would really rather not delete data. What are your opinions on that? Are you guys still comfortable with just flat out deleting data, or if you have the option to do a soft delete, would you rather go that route?
I would prefer a soft delete. In the application I work on, though, the problem is they're kind of doing that already. It's not through an actual soft delete. They're setting flags on contacts to kind of say it's deleted, but it's really not. But
it's the same principle as a soft delete.
Right, same principle as a soft delete. And then when their contact database ends up with, millions of contacts and they're trying to do searching, it does present a problem. It does slow things down.
Oh, you see, Eloquent for Laravel, Eloquent handles that. So Eloquent will treat a soft delete as a deleted record.
Not necessarily.
But MySQL still has to search through the records. They're
the record is still there, and it's taking up physical disk space. And
I'm not too worried about disk space.
It's not space, but it's the location on the disk that gets taken up. Means
and
that
MySQL speed.
The disk head still has to move past a blank record now, instead of repurposing that partition data. If you have 1 million soft deleted records and one good record, you're going to have to go through 1,000,001 records to find that one record.
Interesting.
If it's well indexed, it might be a little bit different, but even then, it's still a lot of data to process or to deal with.
I would say in the last 3 years of doing Laravel, maybe 4, I've used soft deletes constantly. I've never implemented a tool to easily unsoft delete something, and I've never had to go into the system and manually unsoft delete something.
Never? Really?
It's pretty easy to do.
Sure, but it's not something I've ever had to do. No one has ever called me up and said, I accidentally deleted this.
But on some of those things, do you have tools for the user to be able to retrieve that data?
I don't.
Huh.
I don't.
Interesting.
All the stuff that I have soft deletes on, we don't tell people that there are soft deletes there.
Right.
So as far as they're concerned, they're deleted. Yeah.
Right. And to me, delete is delete. You shouldn't tell people that they're deleting something, but they can get it back, because then that creates an expectation of being able to do that all the time.
But I had to do that recently. I deal in a contact manager, so people have millions of contacts spread across different folders, and we implemented a delete all contacts feature because sometimes people just want to start over. And no matter how many alerts I put in place, like, are you sure you want to delete this? This cannot be undone. People would still do it and then freak out. Luckily, we weren't really deleting it, so I was able to get that data back. And I ended up putting in
it can be undone.
Right. And I ended up putting in a feature where once you do it, I then show, because your contact manager is blank, there's now a message saying, hey, you just deleted all your contacts. Do you want them back?
Oh, God.
So now there's a link to undo what they just did. Even though I tried to warn them up front, you can't do this.
So I think in a critical situation like that, where a user was deleting stuff that we knew they probably didn't want to delete, I would move it to an archive system. MySQL has archive style tables for longer term storage that are slow read, and I wouldn't keep the table, my most important table, full of junk.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that moving. I've seen that practice in the past of moving data from one table to another table, kind of that same premise of, hey, this is legacy data, this is archive data. just not a fan of it. I mean, I might be more of a fan of it now that I'm using UUIDs, but still, it's just seems clumsy.
I'm a huge fan of it.
Yeah.
Data that's older than 3 months is never going to be used for me. I collect a lot of tracking data and click through stuff. And if it's 3 months old, why do I still have it in my priority tables? Why is this table got 10 million records because I've been storing it for 5 years now? That's totally crazy.
So you have to write your report code to look at 2 tables now?
No, you when you do reports, you generate static reports.
So how does that work if I'm in there just kind of clicking around like, oh, I wonder what happened between this time and that time last year?
Yeah, then you have to generate a big data repository that has summary details. I've done really big reports in the past over millions and millions of records. And the way we ended up having to do it was generating summary data that took bulk information, gave it a timestamp, and locked it down for a period of time, and said, this is what, if you look for January 1st, this is what that data was for January 1st. And you have to have ways of handling that where you've got a record for what 1 hour is, what 1 week is, what a day is, what a month is. And we generated all of that in bulk. So we would take 10,000 records and shrink it down to 7 records per day. And then a month would have 20 records. So you would have to build off of
that seems really difficult to manage.
Well, these reports would take 3 days to generate.
Yeah, as long as you have it well thought out, it's not that big of a deal to do that. Until somebody comes and says, "Oh, well, I want it in a different time frame that you didn't account for up front with your."
Or I want to add a column. I want to add a field.
Yeah, no. This reporting project was probably 6 months of development time. Because the company thrived off of analytics, so that was what we wanted to see. But yeah, I mean, you know, I had a table with 10 million records that they needed fast reports on, and how do you just do that?
Can we go back to your RFC for type properties real quick?
Yeah,
it's not implementing getters and setters for you. The whole thing is just about having an optional type. So there's nothing about automatically generating those, which is awesome. I love that. You should definitely write an RFC for it. If it's public, no big deal. It's already getters and setters because there are no functions. If it's protected, it's one. If it's private, it's the other. That's awesome. But this whole thing is just having an optional like question mark float. It should be a float, but maybe not.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. I liked what you had said. I was like super excited about that, but that's not the way this one's working.
That's a bummer.
Yeah,
this is just statically typing properties.
It's going back to letting string int float be used. So anyway, sorry to rain on your parade.
I want to go back to databases because I've got another practice for you guys. I know where John stands on this, and John, feel free to reiterate some of the conversations we've had. Curious where the other guy, what's his name? Right out,
George.
Tom. My name's Tom.
Tommy. I'm a coder. I have never actually used this on my own in the past. I've worked in other code bases that have implemented it, but I have never been coding something and said, "Hey, I need to add a database transaction here to track this code, or to track this SQL insert or whatever." So I've never just implemented database transactions, but it's come up a couple times on this project that I'm working on. We do have a developer who is pretty passionate about using it. Makes a lot of sense, and Laravel makes it super simple to implement. It's one of those things where I'm like, I don't really have a good excuse for not using these, because it couldn't be easier to implement. Thoughts and opinions on database transactions? Good, bad, the goods, the bads. Where do you guys stand on these?
You're not coming through, Thomas.
I would say, is somebody talking? Because I'm not hearing anybody right now.
He's been having microphone troubles the whole time you were talking.
Yeah.
It's been super staticky, super.
Well, I know it's something you use, John. I mean, was there anything that made you decide, hey, I need to start using database transactions? Or
yeah, I use transactions for 2 or 3 different purposes. One, I use them constantly in unit tests because my tests do hit the database.
Okay,
so
can I pause you right there? So
sure.
When you're using a database transaction in a unit test, is my understanding that you're actually touching like a production database. You run through that transaction, you just don't do the final commit, and you like dump out of it.
Well, not on production, but yes. So even in my dev database, I'm creating I'm creating records, I'm creating users, creating contacts and folders to test those parts of my code. And then the last step is a rollback. So create it all, run my test, roll it back. And it's just my constant dance.
So
just to make sure.
I use it for bulk data. Transactions have a neat feature in MySQL, which is that the index doesn't get written until you commit it.
Yeah. Actually, I haven't thought about that, but I've done it for that reason too. Insert a couple thousand records, commit. It just makes inserting a little bit faster when you're doing a big bulk import.
Well, depending on your keys, if you have a poorly keyed table or a lot of foreign keys, it can save a lot of time.
So foreign keys slow down databases?
Any keys do.
Yeah.
Each key you add adds a little bit of time to your query. Or not query, your inserts.
All right, I want to rewind back to the testing though. So when you use database transactions the way you're saying for testing, even though you don't commit the data to the database, you're able to, in the test, run other tests like, hey, did this contact get written to the database, and it will give you the correct feedback?
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. So with a caveat,
in the same connection.
The same connection. I've had that problem before where again, going back to this old crappy package that we use, there's DB and then DB data object, and they were using 2 different connections. I had to make sure it was using the exact same connection. So same connection, transaction works fine. And that's what I was talking about last week, where you have that transaction history in New Relic. Every time actually, maybe I didn't do it on the show, but you start a transaction, there's this new thing in graphs that'll show you this. It's capturing a history for that connection. And I've had performance issues where that's grown too much. And then as soon as that transaction stops, performance goes back to being fine. So there is a cost to doing it, to having transactions run.
So there are other benefits than the obvious ones of you have an issue with your SQL, it will dump out without having committed any data to a table.
Right. If you fail some sort of foreign key integrity, you could not commit. I use it for locking single rows. So if I don't want something else to update it before I have a chance to. Now, I say that, and I was under the misconception that it was also a read lock, and it's not. So if I had two processes, one that gets a lock on that row, then the second process reads that row, first process writes and unlocks it, that second process will still have old data.
The previous data. That has to be a pretty edged case, though, huh?
No. Not for me, because I'm doing a lot of I deal with a lot of race conditions, and it's a pain in the ass to figure out. So what I used to do in the past was lock the whole table, which is no good either, because I'm stopping a lot of other transactions, and I could not find a way to do a read lock on a per row level. So now I'm doing it via Memcache.
It's new. That's a new feature. Well, I say new, but it's not really. That's a 5.6, I believe, feature of MySQL.
Really? I've looked. I didn't see a read lock on a.
How would a read lock behave, though? I mean, like, it just wouldn't show you the data?
It just waits.
Yeah, it's a wait until unlock.
Yeah. So process number 2 just it is, but if you're really having trouble with, if you really have race conditions, it's super beneficial.
Yeah, I guess I could see that.
So now Thomas, you have me wanting to go look that up.
It's a feature of the InnoDB table type. I believe the default for MySQL used to be MyISAM. But if you use InnoDB, then you can call a record lock on a row.
But a read lock?
Should be a full lock.
Huh. I'm gonna have to look into that, because I could have sworn I just looked for this in the past couple of weeks, and I could not find a way to implement a read lock. There's exclusive lock. You're right.
How did I miss this? A shared lock permits the transaction that holds the lock to read a row.
I'll have to look at it some more, because I was looking specifically for a read lock where nothing else could read it until I was finished with it. So, cool.
Now, if this is your old system, it's very likely that your database is MyISAM and not InnoDB.
No, all my tables are InnoDB. Don't be silly. Come on, Thomas. I may have coded in PHP 4, but no, it's definitely InnoDB. You don't get referential integrity or foreign keys in MyISAM.
I thought you still got foreign keys.
I don't think so. I think that's in InnoDB. Well, maybe I'm wrong. Because one of those an InnoDB feature that I liked.
I'm probably wrong. You're definitely my go-to when it comes to database stuff.
Sounds like it should be me.
I don't know. Don't know about that there.
Have you guys ever worked with a architecture decision record? Have you guys ever made an architecture decision record?
I have no idea what
that is. What the hell is that? Are you making words up?
I had never heard of it before either. And I keep referring to this Greenfield application we're working on, and it keeps coming back to me. Why did we decide to do this? Who made this decision? Why are we doing this? And one of our developers, Wave PHP speaker Marcus Moore, came to me and said, "Hey man, I know I'm always asking you this question, and I know others are asking these questions on why we've decided to go a certain direction with our architecture. I found this template, and it's called an architecture decision record template. And basically, that's all it is. It's these templates that you put together that, as you make these architectural decisions on a project, you capture those decisions, why they're made, who made them, and that sort of thing. I thought it was a nice idea. the reality of it is it's more documentation that nobody feels like doing. But I've been thinking about implementing this, and just curious if you guys have ever, maybe not known it by this name, but have you ever implemented a similar documentation of when an architectural decision is made, it has to be, that information has to be recorded somewhere?
Yeah, I put a square around it on the whiteboard, and below it I put "Do not erase."
No, have not done that.
Cool.
Oh, you know what? I actually used to take pictures of the whiteboard.
Oh, I do this today.
And then I just had it on my phone, filed away forever.
Oh, no, I usually add it to Evernote, and Evernote does the little OCR, or what's it, OSR?
OCR.
OCR does OCR on it. But yeah, no, we walked into a meeting, was it this week? No, maybe it was last week. We walked into a meeting with a client recently, and he had already done an entire whiteboard where he's drew out everything about this application that he wanted. And it was just a matter of taking a picture, adding a couple of personal notes, and that was it.
Huh.
So I love whiteboarding. As a matter of fact, a few years back, John and I had bought for the entire team these smart pens that as you write in the notebook, it's these special notebooks, and as you write in them, it creates a digital copy of what you're writing that uploads.
Yeah, that was Christmas 2 years ago.
Oh yeah, you got one of those, right?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, the NeoPens. That's right.
Everyone else got one but me because I was leaving for Colorado.
That's. And I still have mine sits here by my desk, but recently Carolyn, one of our developers, who's a pretty avid iPad user, showed me, that she has an iPad and one of the iPad pens, and she. Oh, okay.
Can't
iPad
their
pencil,
branding.
yeah. And she was basically doing the same thing on her iPad. And I bought an iPad a few years back, bought the pen with it, and found the pen to be pretty useless at the time because none of the apps really seemed to work well with it. But it turns out the Notes app now works really well with it. And I've pretty much abandoned the notebook. As much as I like the notebook and I like having the physical notes written, the issue I would have is that I would be writing notes and it wouldn't do the digital translation. So I would get back, the digital translation wouldn't be there. It'd be like 2 or 3 pages of notes. And then I have to say, okay, well, what do I want to do here? Do I want to rewrite these notes? Do I want to take a picture of it? And with the iPad, you see it as it's happening, and you can add pictures, and you can break out of the pencil mode and physically type notes as well. So I've been using my iPad a lot more for note taking and liking it. But yeah,
you're gonna make me get a pen now.
Pencil. It's a pencil, and you should have got a pencil. Yeah, definitely.
It's a pen.
But yeah, back to the architecture decision record. I don't know. Maybe it's overkill, but as somebody who's been on the end of having to repeat myself and almost feel like I have to defend my decisions over and over again, it is appealing to say, go to this document. This is why we're doing it. If you have any conflict with it, let me know. But I don't want to have to explain every time somebody has a question. And to everybody's defense, I'm the same way. I'll sit there and say, why did I decide to use this? Why am I doing it this way? And so, occasionally I would probably use it as well.
Well, I've worked for 3 companies that had an internal wiki. And I can very easily say that I have never, ever used it. And neither has anyone else.
Really? We use ours pretty regularly.
I've had 3 that I was the only tech person, or one of 2 tech people, and the wiki was for everyone else, and it never got used.
Okay, that's the difference. So for the project I work on, it's all stored in Git. So we're using the Git wiki. They used other systems in the past, which was a pain in the ass, but people still reference it. But for the wiki and Git, we're storing things like coding standards, how to get a development environment up and running using Docker, where certain things are located. So it's all tech related, not meant for other people.
It's funny you bring this one up because this is actually another topic we just talked about.
For me, comments are overkill.
My poor wife is in the bedroom messaging me that she has a spider, and she's definitely afraid of spiders, and she's trying to get me to come in. I'm like, okay, do you need me to come in now, or can I wait because we're about done recording? And she goes, well, I've lost it, so I'm getting dressed and leaving. Okay, but the documentation was another topic that came up this week, where we have documentation in a few spots. We've been trying to use the GitHub Wiki because I like the idea of the documentation being within within GitHub, and we've had some success with that. We have an internal system that we used called Teamworks, and a few developers have taken and put in documentation in there. And again, it's a good justification for it, but the issue I have with the Teamworks approach is that our client doesn't have access to it. So I feel like there might be like a little disconnect there. And then once again, Marcus Moore, who seems to be on the cutting edge of these things, reached out to me. He says, you know, it'd be cool. He's like, it'd be cool if we could use ViewPress and make the documentations part of the actual repo, not the wiki, but the repo that the code lives in. And just because everything's in Markdown, Teamworks, the GitHub wiki, everything's in Markdown. ViewPress is the same way. It's Markdown. So we just take that Markdown and translate it over to ViewPress. And I thought about it this morning. It was actually my little side project this morning. I'm like, man, that would be really nice if I could do that. So I started hacking it out. And it turns out it wasn't much of a hack. ViewPress has a workflow that allows you to install ViewPress in an existing application. I leveraged that, got ViewPress installed, literally copied the NT5 from the wiki, put it in ViewPress. It shows up perfectly. And not only that, but we have the added benefit, which I shouldn't say added benefit because there is some search capability both in Teamwork and the wiki, but we have ViewPress search and a few other features. I don't know. I'm leaning towards actually giving that a go, where it's the documentations in the repo itself, which I've seen in the past. I've done in the past. I mean, it seems like a reasonable approach, and then you can track changes as you make them.
But can't you do that through like the GitHub wiki as well?
You can. The biggest thing with the GitHub wiki, like the argument we came up with today is if the documentation was part of the actual repo, then we can make it a requirement as part of a pull request. Where somebody does a pull request, we can say we're not accepting this pull request until you add documentation for it.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, we can still do it with the wiki, but you're kind of policing it yourself. They'll say, okay,
right.
Here it is in the wiki.
It's a disconnect at that point.
Yeah. So I thought that was a really good example, or a really good argument for keeping it in the repo. So I don't know. We might be doing that. I'm still working through a few of the caveats of having having it in ViewPress. It's basically me just learning ViewPress, like how that actually works. But it was fun because just as a test, I saw one of the ways you could publish ViewPress. I mean, you can publish ViewPress through Git pages, or you can do it on Firebase, because Firebase has a hosting service. And I mean, it was pretty drop dead simple. You don't even add an API key. You just add the definition, the project ID, and it publishes to Firebase. So I don't know. Pretty interesting approach. I'll let you guys know how it goes if we actually implement it.
Awesome. I'd like to hear about that.
You guys use Laravel Horizon?
Negative. Negative, Ghost Rider.
For people that don't know, Laravel Horizon is a queue manager, manages workers and queued jobs and things like that. And I had tried a while back to run it as a standalone project apart from the other 5 projects that I have, and found that it's the client and the server. So as the client, it has to run the jobs, and as the server, it monitors the workers and tracks the jobs.
Right.
You can't configure the routes for it.
Well, actually, before you get into that, the Horizon does a lot of cool things, like giving you an interface to your jobs. It lets you replay jobs, right? You can see the completion rate, how fast jobs are processing, average time it takes.
Alerts on slow jobs, stuff like that. It's got a very broad feature set, but my problem is that you install it as a package on top of your existing project, and it wants to be the client and the server. So it wants to host the admin components on /Horizon, and you can't tell it not to. You have to edit the vendor file for that, or you have to fork the package.
But I mean, isn't it, because it's Horizon though? Aren't you able to make it its own separate project? Because all it needs to do is be able to point to the queue.
Because the client has to be able to instantiate job objects.
Oh, good point.
So all of the job objects and all of their references have to be in the Horizon project as well.
And this is Laravel Horizon, right? Yeah,
this is Laravel Horizon, and it's been brought up in the bug tracking or the issue tracker in GitHub, and the response is just like, no, it's basically a done project. We're done with Horizon. It doesn't look like the code has been changed in about 7 months.
This was just last year. This is the one. This is the big announcement he released in New York.
And it looks like Taylor's not even the one working on it. It looks like one of his employees is the one who's responding to the issue tracker saying, "Now we're not really doing anything with it anymore." So, like, hosting it on a specific domain, because in my project, I have an admin domain and a public domain in the same project.
And that makes perfect sense. I mean, that's pretty common.
Right. But the configuration for Horizon is to host it on any domain that it matches. And you just have to fork the project to change that, which is super annoying. Horizon's great. It's a very, very cool tool. It's just like 2/3 finished, and it's very frustrating because it could really.
Are you feeling like it's abandonware or what?
It does feel. I believe there have been minor version updates, just bug fixes.
I see the README was updated a month ago, but something in resources was updated. When's the last? Let's look at these commits. You seem right though. It doesn't seem like there's a whole lot going on. I mean, Taylor's still the one. Oh, it's Taylor in the Laravel employee number 1. I forget his real name and I can't pronounce his handle, but No, they're still doing. Well, I guess they're doing the merges. Maybe they're not actually doing the commits.
Robin van der Vleuten.
Who's that? Is he's the one actually doing the development?
I believe that's one of the employee number one.
No, it's no. It's the guy in Egypt.
Lars Jansen.
I don't know. His handle is Themset or I forget how you pronounce his handle, if it's Themset or another variation of that. But I mean, they're doing commits. I mean, I see commits from June 21st, April 25th. It does look like they're only committing about once a month, now that you mention it.
Right, and there's 94 open issues. Which
there's a lot.
That's a lot.
No pull requests and a lot of open issues.
I might have to try and send a pull request on this one or something, because it bums me out, because it was a huge announcement at Laracon. It was teased for like 3 months on Twitter,
and
it's basically abandoned at this point, except for minor tweaks and fixes. But there's so much functionality missing. Running it as Horizon client, Horizon server, it has the capability of managing jobs on 10 different projects if it wanted to. But you can't, because it runs client server on the same project.
There you go, man. Fork it, do your own thing.
Yeah, so I ended up doing test implementations of this stuff, and I had to go into the kernel component of Laravel to do security on it, the security side stuff, and realized that my kernel has gotten quite beefy. Like my all my middleware, my app service provider, view composers, just I'm starting to get worried about bloat. What? John's laughing at me.
No, I was coughing. I was trying not to, but it didn't work.
Do you guys worry about bloat in your projects?
Yeah, especially not using Laravel. It seems like a ton gets put into the Bootstrap functionality that we have. It's like, we got to stop this. Not every request needs a database connection yet. That's where it lives. So every request gets one, whether it needs it or not.
Yeah.
So.
Be a better developer, Thomas. I don't tell you.
I'm getting into we talked last week about SPA applications and splitting SPA applications up into 2 projects, the API and the front end. And I'm getting more and more inclined to break everything up into components, to really split things up into separate pieces.
Well, that might be overkill, but I keep revisiting that whole separate front end, separate back end approach, and I keep coming up with good use cases for doing it. The other one I came up, I might have mentioned it on the show, but it seems to keep resurfacing of the idea of a front end actually talking to multiple backends. When you're using something like Vue.js, the fact that it's talking to a Laravel application for 90% of its functionality, but maybe for 10% of its functionality, it needs to ping another service, maybe a Node app a developer built, or some other service. I don't know. Maybe something they wrote in Python. By having that separate API, by having that separate front end, sure, you can still do it even if it was all still in the same repo. Nobody's saying you couldn't, but it seems logically, it just seems that separation of duties seems cleaner when they're in separate repos of, okay, here's the front end, here's 90% of the back end, here's that little piece that we use for the back end that's Python, here's that little piece we use in the back end that's Node. I I really like that idea. You know, I don't know. It's the more I get into Vue, the more I see validity in the front end being its own repo. But again, that's not what we're doing. Not that it would be that hard to switch it up to break it out, but I don't know. I see a lot of benefits to breaking up the repos like that.
Well, another issue too is that Laravel uses the output buffering. So anything that you echo out or return doesn't actually get sent to the browser until you've fully executed the program, until it's stopped running. And splitting up the front end and the back end means that you can very, very quickly render the front end and then start filling it with data.
Yeah, but again, you can do that even if it was all in the same repo.
Well, you couldn't, because even if it's in the same repo, if you had it split up into front end and back end components, it still won't output the front end component until the kernel and the bootstrap components have finished executing.
I don't think that's right. If you have if you're using,
because you're not front end, because you're not going through Laravel to get to those components.
Right. I suppose so. Yeah, if you stored them in the public folder, then
right. No, it's not even storing them in the public folder. But well, yeah, it's the same principle though.
If they're stored as views, then they have to go through Laravel.
Correct.
You'd have to store them as.
I don't think that's correct.
Yeah.
Well, no, you're saying view as
blade templates.
Blade templates, yes. Yes, blade templates would go, but
what that would happen in the back end, in the front end code base too, though.
Right. What we're doing is, I mean, essentially, if you're using blade templates, then you can't separate your repos. What we're doing is we're using Vue.js as our front end. It's essentially a SPA, and everything's being rendered through Vue.
Isn't that static HTML?
In the Vue piece, I mean, there's some static, there's some Vue stuff, components.
No, but I mean, the code itself is static. It's not dynamically generated.
Right.
So you
the front end.
Yeah, for the front end.
Yes.
It's just .html files.
Well, no, they're Vue files, but yes.
It's all JavaScript.
It's all in the Vue, the Vue components that you're working with.
You don't really have HTML files except for your index at that point. It just in that bootstraps your Vue JavaScript library and your initial components to get the initial app up and running, and then the rest is built from there.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, so it's pretty, and that's as far as my understanding is, that's the case whether it's part of the same repo or separate. So I don't think you really lose anything there.
No, but I think I like the idea of separate better because it makes sure that you can't depend on something you shouldn't be depending on.
Well, and again, I like it from the practice of you can have your JavaScript Vue developers not mucking around or potentially monkeying around with Laravel code and vice versa. Your Laravel developers not mucking around with Vue code.
It's a problem I actually have. I've had problems where front-end developers do enough to be dangerous and crashed whole systems.
All right, well, we're running along again, and I know Thomas is not willing to.
I love editing.
One more quick question, John, for you specifically. I recently bought the Google Wi-Fi system for my house based on John's recommendation of, it works. It hasn't broken yet. I was having issues reaching Wi-Fi to certain parts of my house, and the Google solution allows you to buy like these 3 nodes that one access the Wi-Fi route and the others are repeaters or
the APs. I
don't know if they're technically repeaters.
It's a mesh system.
It's a mesh network, yeah. So that has helped out tremendously. I was able to spread it out in my house, and
Isn't
now
that like $300 though?
I don't think it was 300. It's cheap per unit, but yes, if you buy 3, it's basically the cost of 2 of them, and you get a third one free. I don't remember the exact price off the top of my head, but it seemed worth it to me. I mean, I always bought fairly expensive Wi-Fi routers because I always felt like I had a fairly high demand on what I wanted out of a Wi-Fi router. And this one really meets that need to expand my network. But I just received an email, and John, you have never mentioned this, so I don't know if I need to disable something or not. But I just received an email from my Wi-Fi router that says, "Hey, your internet connection is fantastic based on the 7-speed tests I've run so far."
Yeah. That's part of Google Wi-Fi. That's the app on your phone that you installed. So it's constantly making sure that you have good internet speed, lets you know when there's problems.
That's pretty cool.
I don't like that at all.
Huh? Why not?
Because
bandwidth. It's using your bandwidth.
Yeah, your bandwidth, and it's.
But it's not constantly running it. It runs it like once a day. But I think I turned mine off.
I don't even think it's once a day. If it's only runs 7, I've had it hooked up for about 2 weeks. So but I thought it was cool. It's like, hey, that's nice to know. Thanks for letting me know that, Wi-Fi. Yeah.
Didn't you also get a Fire TV box?
Oh, I thought I was gonna escape this conversation. God. I should have ended the damn show.
No, you tweeted it too, and it's just like, it's like you tweet, "Abuse me, please abuse me."
Yeah, I did. I got the new Alexa Fire TV. I had vowed for a long time not to get a Fire TV. I don't agree with Amazon's practices on the Fire TV, which is basically they block out all the Google stuff, and now Google won't let YouTube be on it. So it's this little pity war that's going back and forth. I just never cared to participate in it, but it was an Alexa. And I got in today. As a Prime user, and I think as an Alexa user, we get like an early buy of this thing, and so I bought it at like
only $150.
No, it's only 80, like $80 or $90. I forget. It was at a pretty big discount. So I got it. I actually had my hopes up a little higher for it. Now that I have it, it's like, all right, it wasn't as cool as I thought it was going to be. And as a matter of fact, right before the show started, my wife, so I had the anticipation of it being able to control my cable box and change channels and do things like that, because I had a old Sony Google TV that did that. It had a IR blaster that it would control your cable box. It would control a few things. And so I thought this was going to be the same thing. And I was very hopeful when it came in and it had an IR blaster. I'm like, it has an IR blaster. This is what it's going to do. I'll be able to control my cable, this and that. It's not that. All it does is it lets you turn the TV on, turn the TV off, and change the volume. And then everything else it does, like you say, hey, play HBO or watch HBO. It has to be HBO app on Fire TV. It doesn't tie into your cable.
You just keep paying money to buy into these closed networks, these closed devices. That
I'm already bought into Alexa, and my other justification is I put this in the living room with the TV, and the nice Alexa that I had in the living room I brought into our office. So I have a nice Alexa in here now with a nice speaker, and
that keeps showing the blue ring every time you say the A word.
Yeah.
I keep hearing the
he's keeping the cats entertained.
But what was funny is right before the show started, my wife's going to bed, and she tells it she's in the living room, and she tells it to dim the lights. And she says, "Echo, dim lights, living room lights," and it turns off the TV. And she turns and looks at me. She goes, "Really? really, this is my life now. I'm like, I have no idea why that happened.
Well, the TV's a light. That counts.
So
Produces more light than a lot of other stuff.
Well, all right. Before we end the show, while we're still talking about this week, my youngest, he's almost 2 years old, started trying to. I mean, he's been doing it for a few weeks now, trying to talk to the Echo devices, and it's so funny to watch him try to say the word and then say stop. And he sees me, I'll say it, and if I'm too far away, I'll cut my hands over my mouth, trying to focus. And so he does it, but by putting his hands over his mouth, but the other day I watch him. He's trying so hard to get it to happen, and the Echo device will start the blue ring because it recognizes the keyword but doesn't understand stop. I break out my phone, I'm videotaping him as he gets us to stop the music. It's like, no, because that's the problem with the older one now. You start listening to music and he's like, I don't want to listen to music, and he stops it. And he's getting so tall now, he goes over and just pushes the buttons. It's like, just leave it alone. I ended up having to move it out of the living room one day. Like, you touch it again, I'm taking it away. Oh, fun. Kids are fun.
Yeah, that's not the word I was thinking, but
when do you see your kids again, Thomas? I mean, is the divorce final yet, or?
No, they're actually starting to break down and really get homesick and miss me. So I see them again I see one of them again in 9 days or something.
Back in stages.
Yeah. The two bratty ones are staying for an extra 3 weeks or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Pretty nice. It's
pretty nice, except for you complaining that you're missing them and don't like being home alone.
You haven't done that this week, have I? I got over the hump. I'm now reacclimated to I'm reacclimated to single life. I'm buying video games I want. I'm leaving beer out on the counter. It's been pleasant.
We'll make sure the wife doesn't hear this one.
Oh no, she knows 100%. She calls me to tell me that she's jealous.
All right, we're over an hour and 20 minutes into this thing.
20 more minutes to go. We're setting a new record.
You've been listening to PHP Ugly. I'm John Congdon. Thanks for listening.
I'm Eric Van Johnson. Appreciate you being here. Wave PHP, September 19th to the 21st. Be there.
And I'm Tom Rideout. Our government is a fraud.
Keep it ugly.
Keep it ugly.
Keep it ugly. Had to end it on a high note. That was his doom and gloom.
Have you guys seen...
I stopped recording, FYI.
Okay. Have you guys seen Ready Player One?
No.
Worth it?
Yes.
Really? I was so not interested in seeing that. It was something about Spielberg and a bunch of just properties that I was like, nah, I'm not really interested in this.
So the book. Have you heard about the book?
Yeah.
Basically, the issue with the book is that he can't just say this room is full of characters you recognize and love.
Mm-hmm.
He has to say, over there's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and over there's the DeLorean, and there's Doc Brown, and there's this, and there's this, and there's this, and it's just lists of pop culture things.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets real fucking exhausting. But in a movie format, when there's a giant battle, your eye is drawn towards the sort of pop culture icon that you care about. So it's not hitting you over the head in the same way. Now there's some stuff where you just go okay, sure. But it's also not that different from GTA, Grand Theft Auto Online, where they're kind of doing that already. Like they have the flying DeLorean and shit like that.
Mm.
But there's one scene that just not even a scene. It's just there's one issue that just got me, and I'm like, come on, it was too easy to just write away an issue by doing this. But the bad guy like has his password written on a sticky note.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, you're like, ha, corporate douchebag bad guy doesn't know his password, has to put it on a sticky note. But then like 10 minutes later, they ask him, like, where's this girl you kidnapped? And he like lists off a 20 character name for a prison cell. Like he just kidnapped her and put her in a prison cell, and he knows the name of the prison cell that's just like 20 random fucking characters. And you're like, okay, so why did he have his password written down if his memory is so good? Because those two things, the fact you could have just said she's in cell 12, or I don't know, let me look it up. But instead you have him have incredible memory for the cell number that he just put some random person in. It bothered me so much.
Sounds like it.
But Eric, I was surprisingly entertained by it. It was well executed, and it has the corporate dystopia cyberpunk feel that I like.
Require. Eric, you have a time capsule, right?
Yeah.
Open airport utility for me, por favor.
I actually don't have it installed. Oh wait, I do have. You're talking about the actual time capsule?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have it installed right now. I just bought a new router so I can install it. Actually, I just didn't plug it in.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you need like a time capsule to get back to my Mac working properly.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. I'll get that installed tomorrow.
Why you need that? It makes absolutely no sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Back to my Mac hasn't been working lately. I'll test it again when I'm out. Well, I was planning on being out tomorrow, but that's gonna change now. Whatever. I'll figure it out. See if it's working again.
Okay.
But basically,
yeah, I have it sitting over here, right over there. Actually, I just had to buy a new router. I had an 8-port hub, a smart hub, and I ran out of ports, so I just bought a 16-port smart hub, and now I can plug that back in.
Jeez, you guys buy so much stuff.
You guys, what did I buy lately?
I don't know. I assume another video camera for your child's room.
No, I've got plenty of those sitting around. I did buy a new tablet.
There you go. Way to prove him right, John. Good job.
But to be clear, it's a POS Android $40 tablet that if I really needed it as an Android tablet, I'd be very pissed off. But
I'm sitting there thinking point of sale. Why did you buy a point of sale tablet? Oh no, I get it now. What he's saying.
But really, all I needed it for was a web browser, and it works fine for that. Super slow.
Did you see the link I put in the chat room?
No.
The kids?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still clicking through it.
Such a great subreddit.
God. So bad. This is so bad. All right, I gotta go. I gotta go kill a spider.
So, all right. I'll continue talking to Thomas about record locks. The record lock is not a read lock.